another thing, it's not as though you're going to get the opportunity to, it's not like you're going to pack up all your bags, you're going to move to Africa, and you're going to just automatically, instantly, by virtue and by nature of the move, you get to live some pro-black, Afrocentric, African-centered life filled with, derived from African spirituality or traditional African spirituality. It doesn't happen like that. That is something that you have to build on your own. And so, you can build that no matter, you have to build it. And if you want it, you need to build it. But you have to build it on your own no matter where you are. First and foremost, if you don't already know, well, then you need to be doing more research. But you should already know. Most African countries are either overly, heavily, predominantly populated by Christians and Muslims. There's no groundswell movement of African traditional spiritual lifestyles or anything of that nature. That doesn't exist. Not as a whole, not as a predominant, not as an on Front Street. Now, there are some, I said most, I didn't say all. There are some where there are some African countries where traditional African spirituality in one manifestation or another are more upfront and on Front Street. And so if that's your thing, then again, it behooves you to do the research to figure out which countries there are. Because if you think you're just gonna get it just because you're on the continent, you are sadly mistaken. So, again, the idea, hell, to some extent, just as the West, just as the US is predominantly, overwhelmingly populated by Christians. Again, you get to Africa, you're going to see most people are either Christian or Muslim. And that comes with all of the problems, and that comes with all of the pitfalls and the caveats and oh my God, I didn't recognize and realize that you see in any country, especially over here in the West or the global North, especially here in America, if that is a thing that is a sticking point for you. I'm not saying it is. There are so many different reasons that people leave the country. There's so many different reasons people become expats. An expat is just, it's the word that just defines people who leave their country, most likely voluntarily, meaning, there's a difference between an expat and a refugee. Refugees are people whose life literally depended on, and I don't mean life as in the pursuit of happiness life. I mean peril, life endangerment. You stay, you die. But an expat is someone who says, I want to live somewhere else because I want to live somewhere else. And so if you that's one reason to move to Africa. It has nothing to do with wanting to live an African-centered life. It's just the adventure of it almost, the exploration of it almost, the experiencing of another culture almost. But I am saying, I am focusing more specifically on those of us who aspire to get in touch with those ancestral roots on spiritual grounds. You might want to move to Africa on political grounds. Somebody else might want to move to Africa on entrepreneurship grounds. Again, all of these things, while they may fit under one huge umbrella, they're radically different. There are people moving to Africa for business because they got just enough funds to do nothing here in America, but they are enough funds to operate a business outside of America. Literally, regardless of where they're going. I mean, outside of America. So people got to get this. This is at least something to be aware of in all of these circles where folk want to talk down. You're a coward if you leave the country. No, you are myopic. There's more than one reason to leave the U.S. Well, you're a coward if you're leaving because you don't want to fight. No, you ain't. You might be tired. That's not cowardly. You're a coward if you're going to stay in this country and do next to nothing to fight. You're a coward if you're going to stay in this country and the fight that you say you're fighting is astronomically misguided. And I say you would then be more of a coward than, well, you might be ignorant, you might be stupid, but I say you're a coward because you're not brave enough to face the truth of the reality. And don't hit me with none of that biblical mess about David and Goliath, because it's a myth. It ain't true, it ain't fact, it ain't real. But anyhow, y'all know I digress. These are my morning musings. And so I'm just saying, you can live wherever you want to live. You have a right to live wherever you want to live. There should be no shame to the game. Shout out to old dirty bastard. And you can live wherever you want to live for whatever reason that you want. For whatever reason that you have. I'm just saying, especially for those who think I'll get to be more African once I get to the continent. Now, it may be true. You may have an opportunity to feel it. You may. But what I'm saying is, don't let that be your foundation. Don't let that be your overwhelming drive and impetus. Because you may recognize, you may realize, you may come to see, it ain't like that. You could be African wherever you want to be. You could be grounded in traditional African spirituality, lifestyles, culture, wherever you are. I would submit that if you are African, and whether you want to call yourself African or African descendant or Afro, then attach whatever country or culture that you are, I would submit that you're already African. You just don't necessarily know it and recognize it and realize it yet. But you can come into that knowledge without moving to Africa. And again, I'm not against it. Clearly, I'm not against it. I'm the brother that's definitively trying to make that move. You got to get all your ducks in a row, dot all your I's and cross all your T's. So I'm just saying, so like I was saying, I know I'm supposed to be taking these little station breaks to remind you, if anything you find of interest, if anything you find appealing, if this information helps you in any way, if you feel yourself aligned with it, to it, like, share, and subscribe. And I mean each of those. Like it. Hit the like button, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't cost you anything, but it certainly helps me and my channel, and it helps the algorithm. So hit the like button. Share this with somebody you know who may find it interesting or peculiar, who may find it helpful, who may want to duke it out on the battlefield of the comment section with me, or probe even further, and subscribe to the channel. Tell your friends to subscribe to the channel. That's when you hit that notification bell. Hit subscribe and hit all so that you get all of the notifications when I go live with my morning musings, my afternoon lunch escapades, Shabazz around town, and my deep dives into politics, history, and culture at nighttime. So again, end of the commercial break now. So again, so the idea, we're talking about moving to Africa. And I'm like, please just don't be of the mind that you move to Africa, you get onto the continent, and now African spirituality embraces you and envelops you. And no. Now, depending on how your personality is, depending on, if you're a gregarious individual, if you're a social butterfly, then you may find it easy to navigate and maneuver, and you may find yourself right smack dab in the middle of a community of folks, a village, metaphorically or literally, of practitioners of traditional African spirituality. That does happen for some people. And shout out to you. More power to you. All blessings to you. Some people, especially if you're not of the social magnet, social butterfly persuasion, if you're not particularly gregarious, if you might be a little bit more like me or on my side of the personality chart, where let's just say lone wolf comes to mind. Let's just say Grizzly Adams comes to mind. Then you have to seek it out and you have to build it on your own. So you're going to have to, discover it. You have to be an explorer. Because even though, like I said, there is no groundswell of practitioners out in the open, but they are there. And as I said, many of those many people that you encounter are going to be openly avowed Christians, openly avowed Muslims. There are quite a lot of them that are secretly practitioners, but they're not going to tell you this on Front Street. They may not ever tell you this. You're not going to know. So again, that's the main reason why I say you don't move to Africa to find or to practice. Maybe you move there to find. It might be a little bit easier to find over there than over here. I'll grant you that. But you don't move there to participate in the feeling that might be associated with being a traditional African spirituality practitioner. Because you could do that anywhere. You could do that right here in the belly of the beast. Now again, if you just feel like I'm sick of being in the belly of the beast, I want to see what other parts of Earth feel like, by all means, I'm right there with you. We can book that flight together as far as I'm concerned. But ladies and gentlemen, this is Shabazz with the proper perspective. These are my morning musings. Thoughts that either come to me or, as I like to say, the spirit world touches down and imparts upon me some knowledge and wisdom. So like, share, and subscribe, ladies and gentlemen. I will be going live later. I may pop up you never know, I may pop up at a fancy restaurant and show you all the good eats. But like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you on the next live. Peace.